Okay, great. Now let's go to the more interesting use case, this get flight by flight ID. And remember, um, there is a dependency right here, right? So the get flights by flight ID depends upon the post flights by flight ID. Okay. Now, previously, when we were getting this type of a reachability timeline where the post flight was not reachable, um, no longer applies, right? Because post flight it is reachable. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna redo the reachability after we clean up our console. So let's try establish reachability for get flights by flight ID now that post flight is reachable. So let's do a check reachability and wait. Now there's a lot more requests happening right here, right? There's a lot more requests happening here. By the way, reachability still failed, right? Reachability still failed. And if I show you the reachability for a second, you will see that pretty much that the error you're getting right now is that I wasn't able to get the ID, right? I wasn't able to locate an ID so that I can replace it with this flight ID. That's the error you're getting, right? And if you pay attention, it does the post successful, you created a record, right? Here it is. But unfortunately, nowhere in the response is that record, is that ID of what you created available. It's not available. And then it tries as a last ditch effort, it tries to generate a random number, a random ID based upon the type definition that you have inside your OpenAPI specification, right? That's what it tries to do. So let's look at the logs. Let's look at the logs. Remember, this is the beginning of the logs when we went ahead and we tried to do the reachability for get flights by flight ID. So it tries quite a few things, right? The very first thing it tries, okay, let's get the see whether the API is actually reachable, and it is 404. Then the next thing it tries is to try to do a post flights with no authorization, and of course it's not going to work. Then it tries to do a post flights with the basic authorization, and of course it's not going to work. Then it tries to do a post flights with the same exact basic authorization, and it's not going to work yet again. Now it gives up and it says, okay, let's start using the John Doe token authentication. And this time it does work, 201, right? We got the token, post flight, it does work. We got the ID 9. And it tries it again. And we get the ID 10, right? Here it is. And then it tries it again and we get the ID 11. There's a lot of things that happen under the hood that we don't really need to know, right? But your logs are going to expose them. Here's another one, 12. And now that you have this ID, now it's going to try to access the get flight. My suspicion is it needs to do all these different requests, and this is a suspicion I have, right? I wasn't being told by the team. It tries to use all these different requests because it tries to locate, okay, where's that ID? Where's that ID? I don't see it anywhere. The only place currently you will see that ID is in the logs. This is where you're only going to see it. You're not going to see it anywhere else, right? And the next thing you will see is it's going to try to do get flight by flight ID, and then it's going to start generating those random numbers. You see 4 million, 4 trillion, 40 million, whatever that number is, right? It's going to try to do it, and it's going to keep trying, and it's going to keep trying in order to establish reachability. And at some point, it's going to give up, right? At some point, it's going to give up because it's not able to establish reachability. And I believe this is the number that we've seen earlier on in the timeline. Nope, it's 32. So 32 should be further up somewhere. Here it is, right? So this is where it last tried and it wasn't able to do it, and it tried a little bit more and it failed, and it keeps failing. Why? Because the post API, the post flights operation is badly designed. It's a bad design, hands down. But that doesn't mean that you're toast. It doesn't mean you're toast. You can do a few things. Let me show you. So I'm going to close the reachability timeline. And by the way, you still have access to the different users, right? Token. Here it is. They always fail, right? They always fail irrespective of which authentication they're using. But if I go to the post, this one should have succeeded with John Doe token. Well, it doesn't show it. That's okay, because this is what it's looking for. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go to the request editor for a second. Let me show you a couple of things you can do. Now, I gotta uncheck it. Make sure you uncheck before you click the row. Let's go to the request editor. You see the request editor says, okay, I need the dependency. What's the dependency? Post flights. Right, and if I select this dependency, you're going to see, well, the only place where we have an ID is in the request. Well, not good. Right, that's not going to do, because we don't never pass that ID in the request. Because you're creating the IDs as soon as the data are created. Okay, so what can I do? Well, a couple of things. We can change this into a static value. All right, what's a static value? I don't know. Check your Postman. Let's go back to Postman for a second. Let me show you. If I go back to Postman and I fetch all the flights, right, all the flights. Here it is. We should have, I don't know, we should have about over a dozen flights. So I can pick any one of these IDs, right? And I can hard code it. I can pick any one of these IDs and I can say, okay, well, let's hard code it to value 1. And I can submit and I can send. Well, this is going to allow me to establish reachability, clearly, because the request is successful, but that's not good enough, because I'm missing the point. We're missing the point that this request is dependent upon data being created by another. And if you don't establish appropriate dependencies, you're not going to get the most out of active testing. It's not the way to do it. Based upon our current APIs, the current state of our APIs, in particular the post flights, the only way I can get a value is if I go and I change this from static to dependency. And instead of post flight, I select get flights. We select the response in the body, and I select, okay, give me the ID from the very first element that you return. Again, get flights returns all the flights. I don't want all the flights. Give me the one in the very first ID. I can say all that. So that at least I get it dynamically. So that at least if this is not a number, if this is not a guessable number, I can actually get something that feels more dynamic. And I can click submit. And I can click send and give it a test run. And now it is successful. And if I go to the view timeline in order to see exactly what happened in this particular case, now I'm going to see that my dependency in this get flights, and of course it makes use of the optional destination. So it says, okay, give me all the flights with destination to Cleveland, CLE. And again, my apologies, everything we do is very North American centric, but we're primarily a North American centric company, right? So if I go to the response, here it is, ID 6. Here's the data. I was able to retrieve them, right? And again, the get flights, the very first record is with ID 6. That's why we're using ID 6 right here. Now it's reachable. It is reachable. Make sure you select publish. So you make all the changes we just made to stick. Otherwise, they're not going to stick. Okay, keep that in mind. And with this, my good people, we concluded this section, right? We established reachability. Actually, before we call it a section, let's go back to the inventory and let's run now reachability on this get flights by flight ID. Forgot about that. So let's run another reachability. This should also be successful. Here it is. Right? This should also be successful now. We're making use, of course, of the get flights as opposed to the post flights we were supposed to, but hey, post flight is badly designed. It's our only choice. Okay, so now we have completed. All our APIs are now reachable, right? So let's go ahead and call it a section, and we can come back and we're going to run now a scan across all our APIs. That's what we're going to do.